let's get your name and your lodge and how long you've been a member and what your lodge role is.
Hi, I'm Jenn Sereno. I am currently Vice Grand of Dallas number 44 and located in Oak Cliff of Dallas, Texas. And I've been a member for just about 4 years.
And so Dallas 44 is definitely a lodge that's been getting a lot of press and articles written about it. What about the lodge drew you to it? Why did you decide to join the Oddfellows, and what made you decide to join Dallas 44 specifically?
So I had a couple girlfriends of mine that had been mentioning that they were going to this lodge located in Oak Cliff and that it was really a lot of fun, that people basically got together to conspire to do good and would go out and work in the community. And of course, as somebody who likes to give back as much as possible, that interested me. And when I went down to meet everybody, I realized I already knew like about half of the people there. And it just felt like family instantly. I felt right at home, and I wanted to, do more. And so I joined back, I guess, in April 4 years ago, so 2014. And it's been history ever since. I love it.
So you guys do a lot of activities that seem to be a little bit more, I guess, non-traditional as far as what somebody would think of as a fraternal lodge activity. So why don't you kind of explain what some of those are and like what you do?
As far as activities we do as a lodge, we do have a lot of socials.
Okay.
And we'll get together on what I call our bonus meeting. Usually we meet on the first and third Tuesday, so if we have a fifth Tuesday, we'll designate that to be a social meeting. And we've met everywhere from places like Cidercade, which is a cider brewery and arcade.
That's cool.
To lots of different bars and restaurants. We've used our lodge for an ice cream social and opened it up to the public. We just like to kind of, spread the wealth. If we're going to go support local businesses, why not go to a bunch of different ones? And then they can learn who we are. We also, in terms of fundraising, I guess maybe you may do things slightly unconventionally. We've had shows, concerts, where our local bands, even members in our own lodge, get together and play a show, and proceeds go to our beneficiary of the year. We've done programs that are, for helping orphanages like Jonathan's Place, raised money through things like the Jug and garage sales. Just really depends on what we're doing and how we're getting together. We've had art shows. There's a speed bump art tour in the area where artists open up their studios, and so we were part of that this year. Raised some money again for our beneficiary that way, and we're just open-minded. I think have a Pine Box Derby coming up as well, like Boy Scouts used to do, but we're taking a spin on it and even doing art cars.
That's cool.
So we like to do a lot, just fun, kind of creative, open kind of socials and fundraising. We want people to really be a part of it.
Cool. And also you guys, from what I see posted on social media, you guys do a lot of the degree work and have a degree team that I see, the after image of all the new initiates through. So do you guys have you really latched onto the ritual as kind of like the philosophy behind it, or, do you really feel like that's a big part of what you guys do as a lodge?
I think we do. I think we really believe in, the ideals expressed in the degree work, and part of that is acting it out, and just that part of it, the theater of it, really brings the group together. It's a lot of fun, and we study, and we want to give everyone the best degree that we can. And part of that is knowing the origin. Why are you doing the degree work? It's not just putting on a play for nothing. There's, you're supposed to be imparting wisdom into the people that are joining the order, and why you're doing the things you're doing. And I think everybody has a favorite, but a lot of us, really have kind of glommed on to certain parts because we're practicing them, and we want to get good enough that where everything's memorized, and we want to be able to give our new initiates the best experience that they could have. So I think we do. I think part of that is pushing the importance of the degrees, and I know that there's different degrees for Oddfellows, and there are for encampment, there are for Rebecca's, and I think there's different wisdom to take away from all that. But I guess really wisdom really isn't the right word. It's more the knowledge of it, because wisdom is when you take that knowledge and turn it in, you apply it. So I think that's what we're giving them, is the knowledge for them to turn it into wisdom.
Yeah, I definitely feel like with our degrees that anybody could read them online. It's easy to find. It's it's not unwritten work. They're they've been written about since the 1800s if you pick up any of the old books. But I definitely feel like seeing the people put it on who care deeply about it, as opposed to watching the DVD of it, or you're actually seeing members put their all into it and their care into it and their passion, and that's inspiring. But also, like, you don't really get that full message that first time watching it, and it is through the repetition of either participating in them or just witnessing them as a somebody off on the side. You get the deeper lesson through that repetition, and also through keeping those lessons in mind when you're going through your day and your interactions with people, and kind of how they, it kind of, something might make you stop and think like, oh, this kind of makes a little bit, I would have handled this a little bit differently previously, but now, like if you see somebody who does need help and your first reaction is to like, oh, that's not my business. But now it kind of might make you pause and be like, what, maybe I should.
Well, and it's cool that you mentioned the hindsight that you get from that, because like you said, with the repetition, you start to memorize the degrees, and even the the opening and closing of the lodge, everything that you're going to do in the book, in your charge book, over time you're going to hit a moment where you're having an interaction with someone or going about your daily business that you're like, oh, and it clicks.
Yeah.
It's just like, that's why that's there.
Yeah.
And you're right, you don't get it just right away. It comes with repetition, and it comes with the opportunities to kind of put those tidbits into action. And so it's great when you see why they thought what they did to put that in there, that it meant enough, because it is important, and without giving away too much of the magic. But yeah, you'll just get those little moments where you're just like, oh. Yeah, it's kind of a neat thing, because at first you may not know, because there's a lot to take in. When you're new in the order, there's a lot to learn. And I'm still learning. I'm still new. I mean, I've only been here for 4 years, so.
It's
a lifetime.
Yeah, I'm just now 5 years in, and even though I'm on a sovereign level committee, I still like I have no shame in just telling somebody like I don't know shit about this, so please bear with me. I don't know how this works,
but I'll find out, and
but
I'll
somebody,
get back to you.
Yeah, but there's always somebody who will be glad to sit you down and explain how, if it's like a specific, project works, or a committee, or how any of the aspects of the order, not just ritual wise or fraternity wise, but like nuts and bolts wise. And there's just so many moving parts that keep things moving that I feel like the average member might not even be aware of. And I know, part of my job on communications committee is supposed to try to educate people, and I'm trying to figure out a way to get that kind of out, so people are a little bit more understand how things work, so maybe they would be more inclined to volunteer to do something, because they might not even know there's something there to volunteer to do.
That's true. And also I think, part of it too is, creating an open forum where people can, express themselves. And in order to do that, sometimes you need a lot more information, to kind of make a decision like, oh, okay, this is how I can contribute to, say, this committee, or this is how I contribute to this event that we're doing, or this is how I can contribute in my lodge even. Sometimes I think people, are cautiously optimistic and want to have some space and time, to learn where they best fit and what they can best do. And so we definitely need people like you to help kind of connect the dots for everybody, so that we can kind of go, oh yeah, maybe I can take a higher level task on, or maybe, or I didn't know this.
And it's amazing that for somebody like me to, not that like I have any sort of, power or whatever, to like, I'm just so crazy, I got so much, so far so quickly, just being some rando out of nowhere. But it's because I asked, and more pestered than anything probably, and made it known that I would be willing to volunteer to do these things for free. And I think that's, a lot of people don't realize that there aren't a lot of people that get paid to be Oddfellows.
No, we don't.
And that's kind of awesome, but it also kind of sucks, because it means, yes, because it is all volunteer for the most part, that a huge portion of that money goes out to the projects. But also, since there's nobody who, there are people that it is their job to be like either like a grand secretary, or like somebody like at Sovereign Grand Lodge, like, Sovereign Grand Secretary like Terry, or the people in the office. I think there's only like 3 or 4 people in the office at Sovereign. Wow. It's very small. It's a very small crew that works there. So, you think about it, like, all the work of the order, for the most part, is done by volunteers at the committee level. And people maybe don't realize that, or they don't realize how much work needs to be done, or has been neglected to get done, because we are volunteers and we need more help. And
but part of that is showing up and learning those spaces that need to be filled, and asking questions. And
ask a lot of questions.
Ask a lot of questions, because like you said, you're in that same boat. I'm kind of in that same boat myself. I'm Noble Grand this year. Next year, I'm Vice Grand this year. Next year I'll be Noble Grand. And I don't know how it all happened so fast.
And then
it was really just showing up and asking questions.
And once you hit that past Grand degree, and you are able to take the Grand Lodge degree, and it opens up all these doors that you didn't even realize that there were even doors to open. And that's when it like really starts blowing your mind, because you spend all these earlier years learning just how the lodge works, and maybe being aware that there's outside the bubble things that happen. But then once you get to the edge of that lodge universe, and you cross that boundary into the Grand Lodge, and then into the Sovereign Grand Lodge, and realizing how big it is, and it's overwhelming. And it's amazing how many of these positions are being done by people that are elderly, that have maybe nobody that they're teaching ahead of time.
Right, there's not a mentor.
Yeah, mentoring.
I mentioned that at Grand Lodge this past year in Texas, that they should start a mentor program in Grand Lodge, where they scoop up some of us younger members and put us together.
We've had, people that, God bless them, they've been very, very dedicated members, and they might serve on a handful of committees at the Grand Lodge level, and then they pass away, and
there's nobody there.
That's a handful of committees that now are short people. And so you're not going to find one person to replace all those positions. You're going to have to find 5 people, and then you're going to have to train those 5 people. And it's such a huge setback, because you're losing that experience that member has, and that knowledge that's now being lost. And however, like if they're like a 20, 30, 40, 50 year member, and maybe they really were pulling more weight than they wanted to admit.
Yes.
Because I feel like this is one of those groups that people get really involved in, and then some people like to brag, but I feel like for the most part, most people just do the work silently.
They put their head down, that's right.
And you don't realize until they're gone how much work they've been doing, and what a setback it ends up being that we weren't prepared for the unfortunate and inevitable. So it's
because you gotta think about who's going to replace you, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's the whole thing. It's like that's just sustaining the order at that point when you're just replacing the person. But you also need to bring at least another person in too to grow,
mm-hmm.
right? So you got to bring someone to replace you and then someone to grow the order. And it's with a lot of those folks, you're right. I mean, they're already burning the candle at both ends. They're on tons of overlapping committees and trying to get that done, and then you lose somebody. I mean, that just it sets it back. And then there's the process of how Grand Lodge works, how it works on not just your lodge level, how it works on the sovereign level. There's many different layers.
Yeah, like an onion.
Like an onion, yeah.
And definitely, I feel like education is a huge thing that is hurting us right now, and I know that there's only so much that I can do in my time of what I'm trying to do, with the social media and the website. And
but you've been doing a stellar job. We appreciate you. Everybody at Lodge was jealous that I was coming to meet you because they're like, we have a real website now. We have social media presence. We have an Instagram. We have.
And it's crazy because like so many people are like, oh wow, Sovereign really must be paying you good for that. It's like I didn't get a penny for any of it.
You're just doing
like
it.
Yeah,
That's
the only
wonderful.
check I got from Sovereign for any of this was $99 for the annual fee for hosting the WordPress for the website. That's and really I did it not because I was looking for any accolades or glory or whatever.
No, it needed to be done.
It needed to be done, and
it's 2018. We needed to come into the.
I have a certain skill set that I feel like I know how to do, and I just applied my special skill set to the order, and I feel like I wonder if there's like something like. I hope that through people maybe seeing, oh, look how much Ainslie's done in just a few years, that maybe it'll inspire other new members to kind of like open up their, minds and mouths and kind of keep pressing on their leadership, because it is easy to get shot down by somebody who doesn't understand, or they haven't tried it, or they're scared of technology.
Well, I think that's part of it too, is that we are seeing, passing of the torch, if you will, from our older members that are still in, snail mail, Pony Express time, to what we have now, which is a very heavily digital age. And this is a good thing for the order, because we have more access to information and to each other than we've ever had. Mm-hmm. And the order thrived when we didn't have the internet. Now we have the internet, and we've seen a decline, but I think we could potentially, we can use it to bolster our numbers again, because we can get the information out, the education, what kind of projects we're doing, how you're seeing us in the press and the media. Mm-hmm. Now we have a legitimate SGL website, thanks to you, and these things like Instagram and stuff. Older people may not realize the far-reaching implications of having these kinds of tools. The fact that you can reach a lot of folks, you can get people more curious. People like to see things. They like to see tangible things online. It's like one thing to say, okay, we're this great order that does all this stuff with a barely functioning website and no social media presence, because then we don't see what all these lodges are out there doing. You've done a great job of keeping, the world in the loop, even individually, and like resharing what other lodges are doing. So it could potentially inspire another lodge to go, hey, they did that, they did really well, and what, we can do that too. So without that tool and without utilizing it, I could see us really slipping into the dark ages, you know, like not just because we don't have the internet stuff, but because we don't have the people interested. I mean, you can do a lot with word of mouth, you can do a lot locally, but we need to have you know, a presence that is, people know what our organization is, people know who the Masons are,
Yep.
they know who the Shriners are. You say Oddfellows, and my default is always like, have you heard of the Masons or the Shriners?
Yeah,
and then they say yes, and
yeah.
I'm like, it's the same thing. But people don't have the word in their mouth.
Yeah.
Oddfellows, like they do Masons and Shriners.
Which,
there's no reason why we shouldn't be there.
Which, you know, something, you know, must have happened. You know, we were definitely, you know, back in the day.
Up there.
We were both, you know, like at one point there were more Oddfellows than Masons. And then just at that turning point in the 20s, like when the Depression hit, you know, like maybe the Masons maybe did a better job of still publicizing or keeping some sort of relevance. You know, they have a far more extensive degree system and the appendant bodies, and so that gave them something to sell as far as, you know, the philosophical element, and the, you know, ours is, you know, a lot more streamlined. Not that our lessons aren't as deep, or, you know, it's just we're definitely a lot. What's the word I'm looking for? Like we're not quite as intensive as far as like.
I mean, we're more social. We're more social, I think, but we're not. We're maybe, I don't know, degree light.
Yeah. I think it goes back to just our history of, you know, Masons coming from a stonemasons guild, whereas they had trade secrets to protect, and it was a trade that they were promoting, versus the Oddfellows being the odd jobs, the guild for the guildless, and so they weren't specifically after one specific trade. It was about all the, you know, the lesser skilled occupations. So maybe,
but it was still a social network and social support.
Exactly.
You know, before Facebook and all these things, and you know, that's kind of how people supported each other. You're right. It was more.
But yeah, that article that said it's like the original social network, I totally lifted that line for a lot of those memes I was making, because I'm like, that's it, and that's perfect.
Yeah,
you know?
and
that's exactly what we are.
And that came out of Dallas Innovates, and I was actually interviewed for that article. And the gentleman that wrote it was super nice, and we were interviewed along with Cone Johnson. She facilitated that, and she's great. She's our social media guru, cheerleader, like extraordinaire, because, you know, without her,
she's on it too.
She is way on it.
Yeah.
And, you know, and that's the thing, is like, you just have to build that, and then eventually, you know, there's always got to be someone cheerleading in the background, but eventually it starts basically becoming its own snowball.
Yeah.
And it gets bigger and bigger, and it picks up more steam, or I guess snow, if you will. But that's what the beauty of that is that it will grow, but you just have to build it. And I know we have gotten we've had people come in off the streets to check out our lodge.
That's awesome.
You know, randomly while we're meeting, because they looked it up and saw when we met and showed up and said, no, I just saw it online.
That's really cool.
Or my grandpa was in this a long time ago, and I was just curious if this was still going.
It's really cool when you get people like that. That would be like considered like the legacy members.
Yes.
That it's interesting. Like now that I'm on that contact form for the new website, and on average, I get about between 2 to 4 messages a day of people messaging the website. And so far, I mean, the website's only been live for maybe about like less than 2 months.
That's pretty good. That's great.
It's mostly people asking like questions, like, you know, like about the genealogy type stuff. And we have a page on the website for the steps to go through for finding that. And so a lot of times it's, you know, I'm just forwarding a link to them that they maybe overlooked. But it's like a lot of people being like, my great-great-grandfather was in this lodge. Can you tell me more about him, or something like that? And unfortunately, you know, like, you know, they're probably not going to have any records that are going to be able to help that person. But I always try to be like, you know, maybe you could check us out and see if there is an active lodge near you, so you could kind of take part in your grandfather's, you know, experience, even though, or your great-great-grandfather or whoever, even though you never met them, you could do something that is pretty much exactly word for word how they did it and have that connection. There's a member in our lodge that she found out after she had joined that I think her grandfather was a member in Rhode Island, and so that made her really kind of have a deeper connection to it, kind of just purely by chance.
By chance, yeah. That's great. And you'll see a lot of that too. I mean, you can go into cemeteries and see, you know, the headstones with the symbols that, you know, that they were Odd Fellows. That's always one way to check. And then also you can get lucky if you know the lodge they were a part of. Chances are that you can even find meeting minutes, you know, with who was present during the meeting, what they covered or what they did or what they ate, or, you know, if they had a social. So there are ways to kind of try to track that information down. I mean, it's not a, you know, Ancestry.com like direct line to do it, but there are some roundabout ways, and I've really enjoyed personally going in and pulling our old meeting books and looking at, on this day, you know, 50 years ago, what was our lodge doing? Because we're 2 years older than the city of Dallas.
Oh wow!
Before the city of Dallas became incorporated, we're 2 years older. So we just had our 164th anniversary.
That's great. Yeah, our first, I guess, you know, you could fit maybe like 3 or 4 years worth of minutes in one of those books. Like our first one from 1865 is in the local, the Douglas County Museum. I still need to go through and like photograph some pages. But a couple months ago, I just totally by chance found out, you know, Googling something online, that all the rest of our books from when the lodge, up until when the lodge closed in the 1950s, the Grand Lodge had come and retrieved the books, and I guess sometime in the 1990s had donated them to the Abraham Lincoln Presidential Library, which is in Springfield, which is like an hour and a half from here. And I need to get a hold of them. I've tried emailing them, but I don't know if there's, you know, with the state budget thing, I don't know if that's even an active email anymore. To be like, what are your policies on having people visit? And because there's like, I think like 110 like banker boxes of just books from all these different lodges throughout the state. And it says like, you know, Tuscola is in this such and such box. So it even like, I know which archive box our books are in. And
that's like Christmas coming up. I gotta go check that out.
I thought that stuff would have just been tossed in a dumpster in some landfill decades ago. But to know that it still exists is like, it's like a Christmas miracle. And it's, you know, I'm excited to find out because it'll give us the history of the building when they, you know, they bounced around in the town to a couple different spots their first several decades, and then they built the building, and then, you know, like find out so much information, you know, that way. So I'm really excited to find out more about our lodge history and what our members did and who they were. And
we're really lucky because one of our lodge members is a city archivist.
Oh wow!
You may have heard of him, John Slate.
No, I have not.
So he writes for our Odd Fellows newsletter, with a statewide one. He does a history column on each Oddfellow newsletter that comes out, you know, and now they don't want to really ship them to you, so they email them to you now. So he submits something about a member each time, which is kind of neat.
That's really neat,
because he's a city archivist, so he gets straight to it.
There's like so many things like that I think would just be really useful teaching tools to, integrate into things. You know, if something like that was in the IOOF news or whatever, you know, even on like just on social media, it would be a really, really cool tool. There's just, you know, it's just one of those like, it's just not enough hours in the day. And if somebody wanted to take that on as a thing, that would be, you know, so cool to have, you know, somebody to be like, you know what, like I'm really interested in this aspect of it and I want to take this on and, you know, learn more about our history. And because I mean, like, I feel like so much of our history that gets focused on is like quotes from like, you know, famous members or what they did or, you know, you know, and I know we try not to like kind of like pomp and circumstance about like, oh, look at all our famous Oddfellows that are, you know, were once members and stuff, because
like Charlie Chaplin.
Right, exactly, because it's like, you know, like when it comes down to it, it's like, you know, well, that's great, but like the majority of the members were just regular Joes, and those are the people that I want to learn more about, are the regular people like me who joined the order. And obviously back then it was mostly because, you know, I mean, a lot of people wanted the social benefits that came from it, you know, like the insurance type fund that they had and things like that. But
well, here I just pulled up our Oddfellows newsletter,
okay.
And this one is by John H. Slate of Waxahachie Lodge number 80, but he's also associate member of Dallas 44. And it's his article. It comes in the newsletter every month, and it's called the Texas Oddfellow History News. So this one, he's talking about Brother Strayhorn. It says, on a hot July day in 1878, Brother Sam Strayhorn, sheriff of Williamson County, was coordinating efforts to trap or kill the infamous outlaw Sam Bass. Texas Rangers in Austin were tipped off that Bass and his gang were planning to rob a bank in Round Rock. All local law enforcement was on watch. Sheriff Strayhorn's deputy A.W. Grimes was killed trying to disarm Bass gang members. Bass was mortally wounded in the shootout and tracked down outside of Round Rock. Samuel Strayhorn was born in North Carolina in 1832, grew up in Tennessee, and came to Texas in 1847 to Weberville, now inside Austin. He joined the Texas Rangers, serving under the legendary John S. Rip Ford on the frontier for 9 years, chasing bandits and Indians in West Texas. He spent the Civil War in the 30th Texas Cavalry. After the war, he settled in Florence, Williamson County, to a life of ranching. Brother Strayhorn, an active member of Florence Lodge number 132, served as sheriff 1874 to 1881, and also served several terms as a tax collector for Williamson County. At the annual Oddfellow picnic in 1878, Strayhorn wore the red sash and was marshal for the day. He died August 10th, 1908, in Granger, and was buried in the Granger City Cemetery with honors.
That's really cool. Just a regular guy, you know, and, you know, he obviously had some success in life, but, you know, and a little bit of fanfare, but it was, you know, that's really interesting to learn about, you know, just a regular guy.
Yeah, we get that every month in our newsletter because we have a city archivist.
That's really awesome.
So we're kind of spoiled. I'll give you that.
That's really special to have that, though, you know, and no, I think that's fantastic. And I, you know, if more people wanted to kind of rise to that occasion and do that, you know, I know we have, you know, several people who've, you know, put out books and things like that. I know Peter Sellers has a book coming out shortly that is about Oddfellows during the Civil War, and I'm very interested to see, you know, if some of the legends that I've been told are, you know, factual or not, that have been told me by different brothers over the years. But I think that I think it's those stories that really do make it more interesting, you know, to kind of, instead of, you know, trying to focus on, you know, the top, you know, whatever percent that might have not even been very active members.
Exactly.
You know, maybe with like the exception of like somebody like Vice President Schuyler Colfax or somebody like that, who was a very dedicated active member. And actually, one thing I'd read from him was that he actually attributed his great political success, and he was known for being a great orator, giving speeches, because that was very in fashion at the time. And he, I guess, was a very shy person, and by joining his lodge and by working his way through the chairs, and then, you know, coming up to, you know, be Noble Grand and everything, and that's what gave him the skills necessary to, in his professional life, you know, be comfortable getting in front of crowds of people and give a well put together speech and deliver it in a compelling manner. And I thought that was very interesting. And that's kind of that part on the new website that's like, what can you do for us? What can we do for you? There's kind of that little blip there is, I think, what I kind of built that whole thing off of. It's this, you know, we don't really have an insurance benefit anymore, and we, don't have the traditional things that, there's not really the orphanages anymore and things like that. But what do we offer now that will help somebody in life in ways that you might not necessarily be able to read out of a book that are only done, you can only learn things through action and back to the repetition. And I think, if you're shy getting in front of crowds, and that's something that really sets you back in life, this is definitely, one way to really kind of help get over that hump.
It's true. In a democratic and, kind of open forum environment where you can have a voice and be a part of, take part in what your lodge work is or your lodge is doing to work in the community, which is, can't really go wrong.
I mean,
there.
Just things to actually put on, if you're a younger person, things to put on your resume, like you have experience working a nonprofit, you have experience in, either organizing an event or fundraiser or, any sort of thing like that. You get experience on how to run a business meeting. You get experience on parliamentary procedure.
Sure, that's
There's
right.
like all these things that are kind of viewed as kind of secondary in the order that are actually in our personal lives become the primary lessons initially. That, like for me, like I'm really terrible at meeting new people, and I get really socially awkward, but I've been able to go to Grand Lodge, and I've been to Sovereign Grand Lodge a couple times now, and something that I would have never previously like had the nerve to do. I would have just been terrified, or like the fact that like you're essentially a complete stranger coming to visit.
Yeah, I was a little surprised that you said you have social awkwardness, because I can't tell.
And
everybody was super nice.
Yeah, and it's it's like if I am able to put on that odd fellow hat, I can perform at least within the odd fellow structure of I know how to interact with these people, and I know, like if they have a title or something on their badge, then that immediately gives me information about that person.
That's true.
That I can read like on their lapel or on their, their little collar or whatever the placard is that goes in their pocket.
Yeah, I forget what it's
the
called.
The jewel
yes.
hanger thing. Like you could basically, almost like somebody that's in the military. You could look at that, you could read that, and immediately know enough about that person that you could like talk to them and have things to talk about. And it might be, something that like previously, like I still struggle, in social situations, like if I have to go to like a party and meet people and stuff like that. But it's kind of helped me a lot, I think, to become more outgoing in a networking professional sense.
Sure.
And
yeah, because I definitely struggle with that myself. But the great thing about, I think that's another benefit of the order is like, speaking for myself, like I have a very small family.
Mm-hmm.
So with that, and not only that, just having like a tight-knit network of folks who want to see you elevated and be your best self and give you the space to feel comfortable, in your own, whatever makes you feel comfortable. It's a great feeling. I feel like I pretty much have guaranteed twice a month where I can meet up with what I consider to be my family.
Mm-hmm.
And most people are so busy they can't even see their friends twice a month.
Right.
So everybody's so busy with work, head down, work. And I really do like that about the Oddfellows, about just the order in general, because it does give you an opportunity, to build kind of like lasting, meaningful relationships that you're right, that like bolster and empower you socially,
yeah,
as well as from a standpoint of, kind of taking charge and doing good work. Not being afraid to kind of go, hey, what if we try this? Or, we see a need in the community, and then it gives you kind of a really cool, like, democratic
mm-hmm.
Way to kind of come about some solutions. And I think, the world could use more of that. So it's great. It's great to have that.
And I know probably for a lot of the people that will make it this far listening, we're probably preaching to the choir on how, like having the lodge be a nurturing, motivating environment. But unfortunately, earlier we were talking about, there are still, far too many of those lodges that have the opportunity for younger people to come in who want to learn, and they're feeling, helpless in their lives, and they want to do something that is a direct action to help improve their community, and they're immediately shot down, and they get discouraged, and they never come back, or they never get voted in. And it's these lost opportunities that, I think when, we talk about things that are failing the order, I feel like these lodges that use it as their own, like, selfish social club and hangout place, as opposed to doing the work of the order. If your lodge is not doing, the things it's supposed to be doing, getting out there, donating money, holding events, if you're not doing that, then you're not doing the work of the order, and you're failing as a lodge, and you're not upholding what you're supposed to be doing. And if somebody comes to your door and they want to join and they're interested, you are duty bound to, show them everything, and then, help them to become a good member. And if they have an idea, even if it's outlandish, I think the whole, hearing over and over again the shooting down of new members, and then they get discouraged and they never come back, that's the, it's not getting the new members that's killing us, or that's the hard thing. It's when you get the new members, having, I get, emails from people, I want to join, and I try to throw them in the right direction. And the worst thing to hear back is, like, I already tried that email, or I tried that phone number, it didn't work, or I got a hold of them and they just don't meet, or whatever. And it's like, or if they join and then they have an experience that's completely opposite to what it's supposed to be, and then I feel like, we failed that person, because they could have been the best member for that, for that area, and really did something amazing for the order, but they were failed by that lodge, and they were failed by me or whoever had forwarded them onto that person, because we didn't do our due diligence in making sure that that lodge was operating the way it should be.
Right. I can't tell you how many times I travel pretty extensively. I've looked for lodges, trying to get, contact information to whoever is actually operating that lodge, and it's not readily available.
No.
It's not readily available, and I've had to email Grand Lodge to find out, if the lodge has demised, or if anybody was there when they met. There's no social media presence. There's a lot. There's a lot of hurdles.
Yes.
Being a new person coming in, and so that's why it's really even more important that if you are a part of a lodge, that you need to be on your best foot, and be as helpful as you possibly can, to be gentle with new people coming in, because that's how we're going to keep our members, because there's a learning curve, and then not only that, there's the hurdles of figuring out, where am I supposed to be? Who am I supposed to talk to? What am I supposed to be doing? There's a lot of that on top of learning about all the degree stuff and, what we're about. So that's always my advice, is just to go really gentle and give people a chance. Like, get them in. Don't make a preconceived, notion of who you think somebody is. Give them a chance to come in and do well. And then if things don't, work out, okay. But, you got to I feel like we just owe everybody a chance, because that's what we're supposed to be. We're supposed to be about friendship, love, and truth. And if you love somebody enough, to be their friend, to also tell them the truth, then you owe it to them just to kind of, say, hey, I'm holding some space for you. You may not get this all right away, but I'm here to help you.
Yeah. And, it's definitely one of those things that, because there are so many hurdles in joining, I know we have to also be careful who we let in, and we do have to be wary that, some of these lodges that are seemingly not very active, they might be sitting on a good pile of money, and, somebody might catch wind of that, and they might join, and they might seem like the godsend member that walks in off the street that's going to save the lodge, and really they're just there to kind of worm their way in and defraud it. And or it might even be a relative of a member or something, be like, oh, I turned away this one person, but I'm going to have my nephew or my niece join, and that person might not be a good person, when it comes down to it. It's very hard to be selective but also be inclusive at the same time, but I think it's the kind of selectivity needs to be very enforced, and people need to be aware of it and not just be taking people out of desperation, but also know to not be so selective that if somebody that does come in is genuine and wants to do the work, doesn't get turned off or turned away or shot down immediately and discouraged and never comes back. And then that might have been that one person that comes along every decade, that if your lodge hasn't had a new member in 10, 15 years, and that was that one chance and you just missed it.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, that's part of it too, is, how you're going to grow your lodge. I always say you don't grow with no,
Yeah.
you can't constantly, I agree with being selective, of course, but I think we're at a point where there's a lot of information out there, and that's why you get sponsored. That's why there's an interviewing committee. We have a lot of checks and balances in place, I feel, that are good ways to find the content of somebody's character, if you think they're going to be a good fit or not. But you can't, you can't expect to grow if you're only going to grow the same.
Yeah.
If you're not, taking into mind diversity, and diversity doesn't mean just ethnicity, but it means age diversity, it means gender diversity, it means a lot of social diversity, different backgrounds. That includes, putting affluent people in with poor people. That means, inclusivity in that way. I think the way that we're not supposed to, vote people in is if we think that they're gonna be the opposite of the friendship, the love, and the truth. If they don't have that going for them, okay, but the rest of that stuff is just a small facet of what a person is. You can't make a huge judgment based off of somebody's socioeconomic status or their gender or anything like that, because it's just a small facet of who somebody is.
Yeah.
And you could be really biting off your nose to spite your face. Is that how that saying goes?
Yeah.
Yeah, just by saying, well, we only have, 2 female members, we don't really want another female member, or whatever it is. Don't do that kind of stuff. Give them a chance, give them an opportunity to show up, to interview, to be a part of your socials, to be out in the community helping with you. You don't have to be a member to help. If you're out doing work in the community, anybody can come and do that. Anybody. And that's how we're going to keep the momentum going, because that's what gets people excited, is that not just the social exchange, but the feel-good endorphins that you get off of helping somebody, genuinely helping. Yeah,
because if all you're doing is like having, 1 or 2 meetings a month and then going out to dinner, and at that one meeting or whatever a month, like all you do, like your only actual business is talking about who's sick and reading out the mail you got from Grand Lodge, that's you're not doing it.
No.
That's not going to make people want to come back. And it's got to be,
That's why I say, I'm like, so sing the songs, do all the stuff, do all the quote unquote cheesier stuff, because it's the fun stuff, and that's what keeps people engaged. Get out in the community, do help where you see a need, work the tenants, and helping the sick and in distress is part of that, and burying the dead and educating the orphan, doing all that stuff. But also, just outside of that,
we have a past grandmaster who is just one of those guys that when he talks you listen, and everything he says is like it's like listening to Gandalf. It's like this wonderful advice that's like so woke that you're like, oh damn, like that's the shit, he gets it. And like he one of those things that he says is if you go to lodge and you go home feeling worse than you did when you came in, then there's a problem. Because when you go to lodge, you should go home feeling better than you did when you went in that door. And it might not be every single meeting, but for the most part,
yeah.
like you should go to lodge, or you should leave lodge feeling better than when you came in, because that means you did something good. And even if like things don't go your way, or if a vote doesn't go your way, you're still, that's the will of the lodge. It's nothing personal. And I think just listening to him talk, really, I should definitely try to get him recorded when I go to Grand Lodge.
What's his name?
His name is Eric Smith. He's not on Facebook, so there is a different Oddfellow that's an Eric Smith on Facebook. That's in Texas. That's not him. His wife, April, is on Facebook.
We have an old Gandalf too, and there's actually a small documentary film with him in it, interviewed in it.
Is it Horace?
It's Horace Scratcher, yeah. So have you seen that?
Yes. That's a fantastic little film. Yeah, he seems like a treasure.
I swear, I cry every time. I mean, happy tears, but I cry every time I see that. I just love him so much. He's just so.
But that wisdom of people who are in it and they get it. They didn't get caught up in the jewels, and they didn't get caught up in the banquets and the honors and all that kind of stuff, and they hold in their heart the true meaning. And I feel like, that's so, that's the stuff we need to be teaching people is, I need to definitely try to work harder and get some more film, video footage of, people just talking about Odd Fellowship and why they're Odd Fellows, and the people that are still passionate about it, and not the ones that are just going to sit and, just rattle off like a brochure. Like the people that really had life, it really enriched their lives and made their lives better.
Life affirming. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it wasn't like, oh, this is just like a club I joined because I was bored and it gives me something to do when I'm retired. It's, because it's a lot of work to be an Odd Fellow if you're really going to do the work. A guy that just recently passed away, Bob Smith, past Sovereign Grandmaster. He's from Illinois, and he passed away a couple weeks ago. And he joined the Odd Fellows late in life. He joined after he retired as a minister, and in 15 years he was able to go from an initiate to Sovereign Grandmaster. And his whole thing was, you get out of it what you put into it, and you actually get more out of it than what you put into it. And he obviously was very focused and put a lot into it to go to be, head of the entire world in 15 years. But, he definitely, liked to let everybody know that's like anybody can do it. It's not, this unobtainable thing. If somebody wants to rise through the chairs, they can do that if that's what they want to do. But, I feel like most people don't want to go that route. But, without realizing that, like, if you want to do the work, step up and do it. Don't wait for somebody to ask you to do it. Just go and do it, or ask somebody else, like, what do you need to do? What do you need help with? Is there a committee you want to put me on? I'm willing to do this, and I think that's one of the main things that I hope people maybe can start doing more of, at least in my lodge, is feeling either confident enough or empowered enough to be like, hey, let's do this. I want to try this event. Let's do this. And to kind of, or volunteer for a position, next time elections come around and installations, and they're like, hey, I've been, outside guardian. I want to be the warden or something. I want to do something that has a little bit of work involved. And I hope that, more members want to kind of be more involved in a deeper level and kind of get more out of it than, what they've been getting, or,
And I think they do too, and I think that's part of what's important as being a noble grand, is having the foresight to appoint people, like especially new people that are showing promise, that are showing up constantly, being active. give them opportunity. Ask them, hey, would you like to hold an office, or like, would you like to hold a seat? Give them opportunities as well. I mean, as well as people asking for opportunities, but if you see people trying, meet them halfway. I think that's part of it too, is just don't always assume that people will ask. Sometimes they want to be approached, or they need to be approached because they don't know.
Yeah.
So that's part of what I'm trying to do next year, is get a lot of new people into seats, since we do have such a full lodge and we are packed, which is a nice thing to have. And then also get people, moving through on the top part.
Do you find that I've not been in a lodge situation where there are almost like the full room kind of situation? Do you find that makes it difficult sometimes to keep things like in order, or do you think that or as far as keeping things organized in the meeting on task, or do you feel like it's still, even though you get 30-40 people in there, it's still like the same handful of people that are the ones that kind of rise to be the more vocal members and raise the kind of issues? Or
I think maybe it's a little column A and column B. I just think it depends on the personality of the people participating, because we do have more introverted members, and they may wait to take those questions or suggestions to committee work, which I almost prefer, because then you're doing the work outside of lodge and you're bringing committee reports in, and so things stay streamlined. And we have a good way of usually tabling it if it starts going off too crazy with the large group, So I feel like we do get a lot done in that way, because there's a lot being done outside of lodge and being brought to lodge. So we don't necessarily have to talk as much, and it generally goes pretty smoothly. Granted, and like some of our meetings we have to have degree work, right? So then that'll be business light. So it just really just depends on what our agenda is. But generally, when there's business to be attended to, I think everybody's pretty decorous, and it goes very smoothly, because we're using parliamentary process, and everybody, even the new people, are learning how, and they get in there, and we have school of instruction. So I feel like we do a good job of trying to create space for people to interact in whatever way they want to, and keep things relatively like our meetings usually start at 7:30 and we're done by 9. And we have a large group.
Okay.
So an hour and a half.
Yeah, I think ours sometimes run around an hour-ish, depending on what we gotta vote on or whatever.
Right.
As far as like you mentioned, doing the school of instruction. So earlier you'd said you do that
once a month.
Once a month. So what does that entail?
On the fourth Tuesday. So what that entails is our musician who is about to get his 50th year pin, Al Cabot. We love him. He's awesome. Very knowledgeable in just how you address the lodge, a little like where you should be walking, when to do things. Very knowledgeable in all of that. Degree work as well. What the regalia means, what to look for. He'll pick kind of a theme for the night. So he'll say, okay, we're working on regalia tonight. And he comes up with fun ways to be like, okay, this is a quiz now, but it's a fun quiz. It's like, okay, I'm going to show you these, try to memorize it, look at the symbolism, trying to teach that visual symbolic, language, but also the ins and outs of how to act in lodge. And I think the way he does it is it's great. It empowers people who don't know, because it's not like you sit there every lodge to the new people and go, this is how you have to do everything. So we could spend all night doing that. So it's kind of like one of those things, like you said, with repetition and time and showing up and observing and act, being a part of the action, and then doing the school instruction and getting a mentor.
Yes.
Getting a mentor and taking what they tell you and kind of putting it all together, then you kind of get a feel for how things operate, and you become more and more comfortable and more confident to not only participate and be able to make suggestions and changes and alterations, but also be in the flow, if you will, because I don't know if you've ever seen a meeting go from start to finish when everybody's like memorized the opening and closing of a lodge.
And it's very impressive when, we in our lodge, we use the Red Book.
We're pretty dependent on it too.
Yeah, but we our grand instructor, when he does the initiations, he's always the noble grand position, and he has a lot of that stuff memorized. When he's doing that unwritten work, he is like spot on. But the thing is, he makes it kind of funny too. It's because it's a very serious event, but then you kind of get to this certain point, and he lightens it up a little bit, but it kind of makes it easier to remember, because he kind of makes a little joke or an alliteration to help you remember, because you've gone through this ordeal and you're probably confused as hell, and now you've got to memorize some shit.
Yes.
And by him kind of taking it back and kind of not making a joke, but making it lighter, I guess, lighter hearted, and helps them maybe relax a little bit and remember the content a little bit better, because they're definitely overwhelmed. It would I don't know if your member would be willing for somebody to film, but I wonder if there's any way that if you're
that's
some
a good
of those
question.
were filmed.
I could ask. Yeah.
Because I don't know if you've seen any of the videos on IOOF
TV.
Yeah. Because California, I some year I'm gonna have to make it out there to their educational seminar that they do every year. But they've got great, educational videos on there like the parliamentary procedure video that's 48 minutes, and it's just really goes in depth on all these different aspects of stuff. And if we just had maybe more footage, that because there are a lot of regions that a lot of the membership maybe has been lost as far as that level of leadership and competency and precision of what a member should be doing, and things have gotten maybe a little too casual, or some of the the importance of things has not been handed down, and I'm not even talking about ritual specific. I'm talking about when you do enter the room for the flag ceremony or something, and when you hit your corners, and why don't you cross in front of the Noble Grand Station? Things
Right.
like that. They might just know oh, you're not supposed to do that, but it doesn't make much sense until somebody says why. And then getting into things like that would be really good content.
It would be. It's to the point where we've gotten, delved pretty deeply into that stuff to where we even want to change the linoleum on our floor to actually change the color of the path you're supposed to walk, so people know. Oh,
that's cool.
Yeah. So we have linoleum, and some of it's coming up, so we want to actually and it happens to be right where it needs to go.
Because that's where everybody walks.
Yeah. So we want to pull it up and put fresh down and have a different color, and then okay, this is where this goes. And we've even gone so far as we have our chaplain stand out in center, which is really old practice. It's been since I think the early 1900s.
Okay.
But that was kind of written out.
Okay.
So we do some things like that differently. We have a musician. We have, but yeah, you're right. It's why don't you walk there? And where do you stand? And how do you address the lodge? And if things, if you're voting on something, what's the stuff you're voting on and why, and so we try to go over a lot of that, and we're really thankful to have Al, because without him and Horace and some of our senior members to be our mentors, we wouldn't have that knowledge base. We wouldn't be able to confidently say XYZ without them. We could study it, but taking it from the guys who've been in there for 50 years, who's taking it from the guys who were in 50 years before, who's taking it from, that's pretty special.
And I feel if we are able to maybe document some of these things, I think, not that I'm trying to give homework assignment.
No. I mean, I think it's great.
But if
we
you
should.
if you could get one of your members to actually, you know, I don't know if, like you said, one's a photographer. I don't know if they have a good camera for picking up audio and stuff. You know?
Oh yeah,
I mean, it doesn't have to be like a produced video, but if it's just like the straight-on video that, you know, we could just edit on iMovie or something, that we could,
That's a good question.
you know, just start having some of these resources available for people that, like, you know, I just started a new YouTube channel for the Sovereign Grand Lodge. I don't have any videos on it yet.
Okay, I was going to say, give me the list so I can...
There's nothing on it yet because I don't have any content. But to try to put educational content on there that is useful, that could be something that, you know, if a member is just like sitting around at night and they're like, shit, I got lodge tomorrow and I'm getting kind of nervous, and then they could just boom, click on a video and then go into lodge confidently, knowing that, okay, I know I'm going to square my corners, I know how to carry this flag in, and I know why this is, and I don't feel quite as, you know, I don't get the agita thinking of that, you know, like, cause say, like, you know, like a lot of times what happens is, you know, like not everybody shows up to meeting, and then you end up being thrown in some random chair that maybe you've never done, and like, you know, maybe you only kind of half paid attention because you're too busy looking in your book trying to dig out the password for the term, you know.
That's right.
You know, like when the conductor and the warden are picking up the password, and there's a whole thing with that, and you don't want to, next thing you know, you're, you know, appointed conductor that night, and you're trying to figure out,
what am I supposed to be doing?
What am I supposed to do, you know. And a lot of this stuff isn't, you know, it's not unwritten work. It's not like secret stuff that, like, we can put this out there and have it be more readily available for members to be educated on. And I feel like the more educated people are, the more confident they're going to be, and the more active they'll want to be, because they're going to not be too afraid to go to lodge. Or it might be more interesting because when somebody just tells you, I mean, I don't know about most people, but for me, like, if somebody just tells me that, well, we do X, Y, and Z, and this is how it is, this is just how we do it, like, that's not very interesting.
Exactly.
But if there's a little bit of that story behind it of, you know, this is why we do it this way, and it might be tied to something of a historic nature or a symbolic nature, then it gives every action of what we're doing in that room a meaning. And that's why this one book I told you about is cool. And I'll have to, I'll read to you a passage out of this book that really opened my eyes to some stuff I never even thought about, and I think it was really interesting. So I'll wrap this up now. So I don't know if there's any last things you want to throw out there.
No, I think I love that we've covered like so much of the bigger, I think, challenges with like keeping members, keeping people interested, you know, how you can help in your lodge, what you can do, how you can work, you know, the program, if you will, to get, you know, somewhere if you want to. And I think any level of contribution is good. You know, I think I value the people that just show up to our socials to help out, you know, just as much as I do people that show up to lodge meetings and help with programming, just as much to the folks who are, you know, putting on benefits and getting, you know, money not just into the lodge but into the hands of people that need it. So I think it takes a village, and
there's no one way to be an odd fellow.
No, there's not.
Yeah, if you don't want to go to any of the meetings, that's totally cool. If you just want to do the social stuff, or if you just want to show up to the fundraiser stuff or whatever, you know,
it takes a village. And everybody can contribute, and it kind of works itself. But I think, you know, we've talked about how we've come out of the dark ages now that we have social media. There's a lot of great stuff happening, and that's a lot in tribute to what you brought to the table. So I know I'm super appreciative, because that's always been something that's a source of not contention, but of like, for me, it's just like when I'm trying to tell people about what we do and not have something forward facing that's like clean and precise and succinct and just like
something that people are proud to point people to.
And the you know, the elevating of other lodges and the work they're doing. I think, you know, you spend a lot of time doing that for the order, and I really appreciate that because people need to see the good work that's being done. We're not supposed to gloat, we're not supposed to brag,
right.
But we're, like I said, I want Odd Fellows to be on par with Masons and Shriners. When people say Odd Fellows, I want them to like immediately associate us with doing good work in the community.
Yeah, because like
and they don't know what we do, so we have to show them.
My mom's in Kiwanis.
Okay.
My dad's in Rotary.
See?
So, and those are two very big groups in this town.
We've quieted ourselves into oblivion.
Yeah,
you know?
we've been too secret of a secret society. And it's like, you can't let the secret just die.
It's like, look, I know we're not supposed to brag or gloat, but we have to at least let people know what we're doing. Otherwise they can't make up their minds about us.
Right, and it's hard for us to tell people what we're doing if we can't even define it ourselves.
Right. So I think it's great. I think we covered all that stuff, and I think
I know it was all over the place.
Yeah,
I mean, for somebody like you who like I've messaged with you a good bit on Facebook, but like we've never met before.
No.
And for us to finally come together, and it's like, of course, we couldn't keep the topic contained to something a little bit more streamlined, but you know, I think it's all very important stuff, and it all ties into each other as well. You know. So
just show up, go through your degrees, learn about it, see, go to your local lodge, write them up, call them up, email them up, see what they're doing, show up to their socials, just see.
And make friends with members online, because I've met so many people all over the world that I'll be talking about, and like I'll be at work talking, it's like, oh, let's chat with so and so, and they'll be like, oh, is that another odd fellow? And I was like, yeah, and like, we'll be like, how did you meet all these people? And it's just like, I don't know, I just did, And we all talk about this stuff, and it's all relevant.
But that's the whole point too. I mean, that's the whole point of joining, and it's in the degree work.
Yeah.
So if you don't know, you need to know. But it is. You didn't join this to like elevate yourself. You joined this to become a part of something bigger than yourself. And it totally is something. And I've been all over. I visited a lot of lodges and met a lot of people through this organization. And every single time has been nothing but 100% awesome experience. You let a total stranger into your home. Yeah. And I'm not kicked out on the street, so I must be doing okay.
Yeah. But yeah, I figure, it's one of those things like, by virtue of you being a member, I felt comfortable with, you and your husband, both being members. Like, I figured you had to be decent people, and you're not going to come in and kill me in my sleep. Hopefully. And in turn for you to trust me, that I'm not going to turn around and kill you in your sleep, because, in essence, we are complete strangers.
Yes. But we're not at the same time. We're a part of a big family.
No, and if I didn't know you and all I knew was your name, I wouldn't have that connection with you, and obviously I think as on a personal level, I think we would get along very well because we do have a lot of the same interests, and we're all into art and tattoos and everything. But by having this deeper connection,
with the onion layer of the Odd Fellows, it is. It's like you said, when you go to Grand Lodge or Summer Grand Lodge, and the person has that little badge on there, it just tells you a lot about them. Yeah,
but it's also awesome because I talk to and I would say make friends with people that I would never talk to
generally.
Or people that come to lodge, or people that like they're my brothers and my sisters that if in my little friend bubble I wouldn't have had anything to do with these people.
True.
And that opens my own mind and my own heart.
It expands your horizons.
It expands my horizon that like we're only seeing people who they are on Facebook now, and I love that we have to leave that stuff at the door.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. No sectarian or political debate allowed.
And I think that's just the beautiful thing. And going back to that old ritual that we got as like the souvenir at Sovereign, it's in there right from the beginning. Like that no political or sectarian or other improper debate is one of the foundational cornerstones of how we are supposed to be with each other.
We're supposed to be social and humane.
Yes, and that is so amazing that like now especially I feel like
200 years later
it's so relevant.
Yes.
And if people, you know, especially getting so oversaturated with all that stuff online, and it ain't going away, and to have a place where it is the third space where it's just like, no, you can't look at, you know, and it really also makes me think about, and I know we're supposed to wrap this up, I said, you know, it'll be a topic for another thing about social media and how we're supposed to act online.
Oh,
but
sure.
that's a whole other thing. So I'm going to stop the thing now.
Okay.
Here we go.
Do it. Stop.